The term muscle cars originated among collectors, somewhat later than cars of this class began to be produced in the late 1970s. The peak of production of medium-sized cars with a powerful V8 engine occurred in the mid-1960s, and yes, we can say that few cars surpass muscle cars in a combination of beauty and power. Today, we will tell you about the top American muscle cars of the 1960s and 70s, and touch on a couple of models from the 1980s. American muscle cars appeared on the roads in the 1960s. Literally, the name of these cars translates as muscular cars. This is how American muscle cars were nicknamed because of their huge engines. Today, we will look at the best American muscle cars from 3 decades: the 60s, 70s, and 80s. 1968 Ford Mustang Shelby GT 500. Mustang cars, modified by American racer and designer Carroll Shelby, were the cherished dream of every true Mustang fan. Released in 1965 and 1966, the Shelby GT 350 models were not only powerful, but elegant and lightweight, perfectly suited for travel. This is how the history of this classic American muscle car began. After a couple of years, Shelby's philosophy changed. Now his cars actively participated and won sprint races of racing competitions. So under the hood of the Shelby GT 500 of 1967 and 1968, there was an engine with a capacity of 355 GP and a volume of 428 cubic inches. The increased body length and more aggressive appearance of the car distinguished the Ford Mustang Shelby GT 500, this American muscle car in the photo, from the 1965 GT 350 model. A little-known fact, the 1967 American Ford Mustang Shelby muscle car models used Mercury Cougar taillights, and the 1968 models used the 66 Ford Thunderbird taillights. It is noteworthy that, in fact, this American muscle car has a capacity of 400 GP instead of the official 355 GP. The fact is that in those years in the United States, the car tax was taken from the calculation of engine power. In Europe, they paid attention to the volume. 1984 Chevy Corvette. The third generation of large-scale models of American Corvette muscle cars has overcome a long way, which actually lasted from 1968 to 1982. Therefore, the launch of the C4 Corvette caused a huge stir and a real storm of rumors and speculation. Some claimed that the car would have a rotary engine, like Mazda, and someone predicted the central location of the engine, like the Italian exotic. In the end, the new model of the American muscle car of the 80s turned out to be not so revolutionary. The first Chevy Corvettes in 1984 were equipped with a 205 GP V8 engine. But by changing the fuel injection system, power increased and with it performance. In 1990, the Corvette ZR1 was released based on the C4, equipped with a 375 GP V8 LT5 engine. A little-known fact, despite the fact that 1982 was the last year of production of the third-generation American Corvette muscle cars, it was decided not to release the new model in 1983, but to wait until 1984. Why? Some claim that it took longer to develop, others talk about production failures. In any case, all the 1983 Corvette prototypes were destroyed, except for one, a white car that can be seen at the National Corvette Automobile Museum. The drag coefficient of the American Chevy Corvette 1984 muscle car was only 0.34. This is 24% better than the aerodynamics of its predecessor. This muscle car from the USA is the first Corvette with fully removable roof panels without a T-beam. 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. This model, like its 1970 counterpart, the Plymouth Superbird, is perhaps the most radical old American muscle cars of the 60s and 70s. But the Daytona model was not born for street racing. Her goal was much higher: NASCAR racing on super fast oval tracks. To increase speed, the creators of the Daytona worked on improving aerodynamics by adding various noses to the Dodge Charger 500. As a result, the Dodge Charger Daytona has an 18-inch nose cone and a 23-inch wing at the rear of the car, which provides additional stability and downforce. The result was impressive. The Daytona became the first car to exceed the speed limit of 320 kilometers per h in NASCAR racing. After numerous Daytona victories, a change in NASCAR regulations forced them to stop participating in races. Cars equipped with the legendary 440 or 426 Hemi engines are popular to this day. Collectors buying them at auctions are ready to part with the sum of $150,000. A little-known fact, the aerodynamic modification of the Daytona helped reduce the drag coefficient to 0.28 compared to other Charger models. This is an excellent figure by the standards of modern American muscle cars. But here's the question. Does the rear wing really have to be so huge to increase downforce? It is believed that there is no, and the size of the Daytona's wing is due to the need to open the trunk lid in the production version. The Dodge Charger Daytona, along with its counterpart, the Dodge Charger 500, are the rarest modifications of the American Dodge Charger muscle car. Later, the style used in the design of these 1960s muscle cars would later be called the Coca bottle style due to the similarity of the body profile to a Coca-Cola bottle. Oldsmobile 442, 1970. The Model 442 of the American automobile brand Oldsmobile got its name due to its 4-chamber carburetor, 4-speed manual transmission, and dual muffler. The Oldsmobile 442 was created based on the Oldsmobile Cutlass model and became a popular American muscle car in the Oldsmobile family. Its platform was adopted by two other GM cars, the Chevy Chevelle SS and the Pontiac GTO. Like the GTO, at first the Oldsmobile 442 differed only in the level of equipment. But in 1970, the Oldsmobile 442 offered an impressive 455 cubic inch V8 engine, especially for those who wanted to get the most speed out of the car. Equipped with W30 elements, the engine produced 360 GP and allowed it to accelerate to 100 kilometers per h in just 6 seconds. A little-known fact, actor James Garner participated in the Nora Mexican 1000 race in a 1970 Oldsmobile 442 car, where he became second in his class. This American massacre was built by the legendary Victor Hickey specifically for James Garner. It was nicknamed the Goodyear Grabber. The 410 cubic inch 6.7L engine was with an aluminum block and developed more than 500 forces, and a 50-gallon, 189-liter sports gas tank was installed in the body. Today, the car has been restored and put up for sale. Many fans of the history of cars, as well as experts, believe that the ancestor of all muscle cars was the car of the Oldsmobile Company, namely the Oldsmobile 88 of 1949. One of the famous American muscle cars of the 70s is the Oldsmobile 442. Interestingly, for the first time on the big screen, this car appeared in The Running Man with Sylvester Stallone. Pontiac Firebird Trans Am, 1978. The 1970s became a pale imitation of previous decades for American muscle cars. Rising fuel prices and insurance forced manufacturers to moderate their ardor towards super powerful cars. This has affected almost all car brands, but not Pontiac. Their Trans Am has become a favorite of the public since the release of the movie Policeman and Bandit, 1977. In 1978, the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am increased power from 200 to 220 GP. A special WS6 package added wider 8-inch wheels, new tires, and fast steering to the car. As a result, the Pontiac Trans Am has become much more nimble and faster on the track than the Chevy Corvette. A little-known fact, in 1976 in the USA, Pontiac Firebird Trans Am muscle cars began to be produced with a T-top body. At first, the Hearst company produced the roofs and they were named Hearst Hatch. But there was a problem. The roofs were leaking. Then Pontiac, together with Fisher, GM, developed their own roofs for the T-top, which were put into production in mid-1978. So some 1978 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am have Hearst T-top roofs and some have Fisher. To distinguish, you should know, the glass panels on the roofs of Fisher are larger than those of Hearst Hatch. Interestingly, the term muscle car was first used in 1964 in relation to the medium-sized Pontiac Tom, which after the introduction of an engine with a volume of almost 6.5 liters, was renamed the Pontiac GTO. This first American muscle car accelerated to 96 kilometers per h. In the photo, we see an American muscle car of the 70s, produced by the same company, the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. 1969, Ford Mustang Boss, 429. The golden years of NASCAR occurred in the late 70s and early 80s of the 20th century. Automakers took racing seriously, and for homologation purposes, for a model to participate in races, a serial analog had to be produced in a batch of at least 500 copies. They often produced extremely dangerous models for the streets. The American Mustang Boss 429 muscle car became a real beast. Its V8, with a volume of 429 cubic inches, produced 375 GP and 6,000 revolutions per minute. But the engine was so massive that it did not fit into the classic Mustang engine compartment. Then Ford signed a contract with CarCraft to eliminate all interference. CarCraft specialists had to redo half of the elements to make room and literally squeeze the engine in. Today, the 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429 model goes for more than $200,000 at auctions. A little-known fact, the first cars had an S-Code engine created specifically for racing. But S-Code is having warranty issues, possibly due to an incorrect build process. It was replaced by the T-Code with lighter parts. The latest version of A-Code for Boss 429 appeared at the very end of the production of these American muscle cars. The photo shows a Ford Mustang Boss, but even today, modern American muscle cars of the Ford Mustang model are produced. So in 2021, the Ford Mustang Mach-1 Fastback Coupe was released. This model has a 5-liter V8 engine, 1970 Chevy Chevelle LS6. When GM relaxed its previous requirements prohibiting the installation of engines with a volume of more than 400 cubic inches on medium-sized cars, there was a real boom in the American automotive industry of large-scale models of muscle cars. Oldsmobile installed a 455 cubic inch engine in its 422, and Chevy equipped the Chevelle SS with a unique 454 cubic inch V8. According to the most conservative estimates, the LS6's power was 450 GP, however, according to some experts, due to the high compression ratio, 11.251, and the huge Holley 780 CFM carburetor, the LS6's real power was approaching 500 GP. The staff of Car and Driver magazine tested the car in 1970 and claimed that it gained 100 kilometers per h in 5.4 seconds and ran 400 m in 13.8 seconds. Think about how much faster this American muscle car would be today with modern tires. Among all passenger cars, the LS6 produces the highest horsepower. A little-known fact, an American LS7 muscle car with 465 GP was planned for release, but it never officially went on sale, and the power of the LS6 Corvette, released in 1971, decreased to 425 GP. Today, the American muscle car of the 70s Chevy Chevelle LS6, pictured in the photo, can be purchased for about $140,000. In 1970 alone, 4,000 of these muscle cars were produced. Pontiac GTO Judge 1969. Pontiac was the leader in the production of American muscle cars in the early 60s. The GTO is often called the first muscle car. But by 1968, the car had too many competitors. Then the idea arose to create a cheaper version of the GTO with a small 350 cubic inch engine. Chief engineer John DeLorean did not approve of this idea. In his opinion, the GTO could not have such a small engine. As a result, the new model differed from the traditional GTO. The Judge car was equipped with a 360 GP Ram Air 3 engine, but buyers could also choose a 370 GP Ram Air 4. The rarest were the GTO Judge Ram Air 4 convertibles. Only 5 copies were produced in 1969. A little-known fact, the rock band Paul Revere and the Raiders took part in the filming of the official commercial for the American Pontiac GTO Judge muscle car. The musicians, being fans of the car brand, dedicated a song to him. This American muscle car got its name, The Judge, thanks to one of the heroes, namely the Judge, of the popular satirical TV show Laugh-In the 1960s. The advertising slogan was, "The Judge can be bought. The Judge can be bought." Such a provocative slogan did not affect the number of sales. Copio Camaro of 1969. Copio, Central Office Production Order, is a special order system that was created for the sale of special vehicles in large batches. For example, police cars with heavy duty suspensions or taxi cars with special salons. But enterprising car dealers with the right connections managed to place an order for American Camaro muscle cars in the same way. Thus, according to production order, number 9561, cars with large 8-cylinder V8 engines with a working volume of 7 liters and developed a power of 425 GP were produced. A little-known fact, the aluminum ZL1 engine in the previous model of the American 9560 Copio Camaro muscle car was essentially racing. It was designed for chaparral cars to participate in Can-Am races. Curiously, there are no external signs on the ZL1 engine that would distinguish it from others. Only the Camaro logo. A total of 69 copies of the 1969 American Copo Camaro muscle car model were produced. Later in 2012, the automaker will return to the Copo name and the number 69. That's how many cars will be produced now per year. 1987 Buick GNX. In the 80s, it seemed that the classic American muscle cars had already outlived their usefulness. But Buick took an unexpected step forward in the development of muscle cars by releasing the Buick GNX with a turbocharged V6 engine. The power of the Grand National, from which the Buick GNX grew, increased from 245 to 276 GP. The car accelerated to 100 kilometers per h in just 4.6 seconds. The Buick GNX immediately became one of the fastest cars on the market. In total, only 547 copies of the model were produced. A little-known fact, after the cessation of production of the American Buick GNX muscle car, there are many extra engines left. They were used in the creation of the 1989 Trans Am anniversary. The idea of creating this model of American muscle cars arose due to the cessation of production of the Regal in the same year, 1987. Therefore, Buick set about creating a muscle car based on its V6. On one of the posters dedicated to the release of the new Buick GNX model, it was written, "The last of the Grand National." Today, muscle cars are no longer so popular. However, there are connoisseurs who are interested in buying this car. When talking about how much a muscle car costs, it is important to decide whether you want to buy a new car or whether a car that has already traveled a certain number of kilometers will be enough for you. Thank you very much for watching this video. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel so as not to miss the new video. I hope this information was fascinating for you. See you soon.